Public hearing, and my name is Chi. I will be your hearing examiner for today. I can hear quasi-judicial decisions concerning particular land use applications for the City of Caldwell. During the public hearing process, public oral testimony will be taken from those in attendance and who have signed up to speak. This sign-up sheet is at the front of the room. When you testify, you must come to the podium. Please speak into the microphone and state your full name and address for the record. All comments should be addressed to myself and should be relevant to the application. Once the public hearing is open, staff will present their staff report, and then the applicant or the applicant's representative will be given 10 minutes to speak. After the applicant, we will allow for the public to have 3 minutes to be able to testify. And finally, the applicant or the applicant's representative will be permitted for a 5-minute rebuttal. After the time, public hearing, and no new oral written testimony will be allowed, unless I decide to vote to reopen the public hearing. I request that everyone treats all parties with fairness and respect. Therefore, please be quiet and respectful when someone is presenting. We are required by Idaho State Code to take written minutes during our public hearings, so please silence your cell phone throughout the duration of this meeting, and thank you. Let's start. So as far as consent calendar, action item, our last hearing from July 12th, those minutes have been signed, correct? Okay, wonderful. And as for new business, action item number 2, if anyone is here for action item number 2, that is a 3MS subdivision, that is going to be continued to the next hearing date of September 13th. So with that, that's open to new business. For our action number 1, this is case number P-000005, Hatch Design Architecture on behalf of Venus Development LLC for a special use permit to construct approximately 123,000 square feet of self-storage for Guardian Boat and RV storage facility. With that, Alex, would you like to start with the staff report, please?
Thank you, Madam Hearing Examiner. Alex Jones, Associate Planner, 61 Cleveland Boulevard. One moment while we get
sure,
that.
No problem.
All right, thank you. So this is, the applicant is presenting SUP 23-5, Guardian Boat RV and Storage. For the subject site location, this is a 15.4 acre parcel located on the Viewstick Road and Middleton Road. This site has frontage along Middleton Road. Here are pictures, photos of the subject parcel from Middleton Road, looking at the subject site. For the applicant request, applicant is requesting approval of a special use permit for a traditional mini storage facility. For surrounding site conditions, there is commercial, a matching storage facility to the east, and then farther east is residential, undeveloped to the north and west, and the airport to the south. For current surrounding zoning, the site itself is C3 service commercial with service commercial to the east, north, and west, and county to the south. For development proposal, this is a traditional mini storage facility. For the landscape plan, I would like to present a late exhibit of the updated landscape plan. The updated landscape plan does meet code, so the staff report will need to be updated saying that this application does meet landscape code.
Okay, great.
And again, staff has reviewed it and it does meet all code standards, so it is approved by staff.
Great, thank you.
Here are the concept elevations. This is the zoning district purpose statement for the service commercial. In short, it is for more intense commercial uses. Staff believes that this meets the zoning district purpose. Comprehensive plan analysis, this site is zoned commercial service, and this is in conformance with the city's adopted comprehensive plan. Utilities and service will be provided to the site. For public notifications, ITD did submit comments, and they said there are no concerns with the development and no submit from the public. This can be ignored because the new landscape plan does meet code. This development is conformance with, aligns with 3 goals and 6 policies of the comprehensive plan as shown here. And staff recommends that the hearing examiner approves the request, that such request is subject to the conditions as specified in the FCOs. I stand for questions.
Great. Thank you, Alex. I do have a few questions, and I know we went over a few of those yesterday. I guess my first question is for Rob. Rob, why is there a common access drive north of the parcel where the development's at?
Thank you. The intent on the access went through several iterations with the engineering department involved in that, but understanding is that access aligns with the access across the street, and so that was the location that was designated to have an access point provided,
Okay.
or to be accepted.
For it to be accepted, okay. One of the other follow-up questions I had was, it sounds like there was some concerns with fire, but then there was a confusion, and it does meet code. Can you just run that through real briefly? What happened?
Thank you, Madam Hearing Examiner. That is correct. At the first conditional staff report of the fire department did say this did not meet fire access. After review of the roundtable notes and discussing with Alan Perry from the fire department, he re-reviewed the notes from the roundtable and found that it is under the square footage requirements for that secondary access. And so the one they have does meet their code.
Okay, great. Thank you. Or further questions at the moment? So would the applicant's representative like to come up, please?
Jeff Hatch with Hatch Design Architecture. Our address is 200 West 36th Street, Boise, Idaho, 83714. Good afternoon, Madam Hearing Examiner. Thank you for your consideration of our special use permit application today. All right. So a couple, I guess, points of clarification with this application. This application is essentially a modification of a previously approved special use permit that is still active. The intent with that is the original site plan is right here, had on the very south, the southerly buildings were 3-sided canopies. And so this was set up for recreational storage, but it was in a truly traditional mini storage capacity. With the proposed amendments to this application, our current site plan is actually set up for still mini storage, but it would be all fully enclosed, and these are proposed to be condominiumized. So we've worked with Kane County Assessor as far as what that looks like from an assessment standpoint. They haven't done a lot of these, but they do have a couple that they've done mostly in relationship to the airport. So we did have kind of a standard basis as far as what this looks like, because it's a relatively new concept, real analyzation. Also, with staff's comments and staff report, they did have some comments on our original conditions of approval on the landscaping plan, wanting to increase the amount of grass we had proposed on the property. So in our revised late exhibit landscaping plan, we feel that does address the intent. One consideration with the way that we're interpreting the code and as was previously addressed, we don't have really any landscaping beds or landscaping within the project because it's a storage facility. So we wouldn't be proposing any grass within the facility because there is no grass. So The facade language hasn't changed. The architectural language that was previously approved also hasn't changed. Material selected, same as well. Then we have, with the improvement to the roundabout on Middleton and Ustick, which is currently going on like today, we did reach out to Knife River and work with TJ Franz and Wayne at the City and Public Works in regards to some of the infrastructure improvements that really need to go in now, especially for that northern access that you just discussed. So we did work with the city and with Knife River, who is the contracted contractor to do that work, and they are going to be extending water while they have the entire road tore up, because once that is done, they'll do about a 5-year moratorium on any utility improvements. So we wanted to make sure that we had anything that was in that current affected area that was requested by the city is being coordinated. So we did get that coordinated. Also, as far as your question on access, the original site plan only had 2 access points, and we did request some leniency with the fire department as far as the adjacency of those access points, because they're both on the eastern side of the property along Middleton. You can see in our revised site plan, we did propose and adjust the site to have a westerly access point for emergency access as well, which does meet the intent of the International Fire Code. Whereas previously it was a leniency, now we are truly meeting that code. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thanks, Jeff. Yes, I do have a few follow-up questions. So obviously there's a remaining portion of the parcel is that going to be a future phase? What's the plan right for that, or no plan at all at the moment?
Great question. So right now, the intent would be to roughen utilities for that north access point, and then we have our southern access, which is on the northern side of our parcel, which eventually those two will connect in some capacity. We've had some interest from more of a specialty storage refrigeration company that wanted to do kind of a large warehouse for refrigeration storage. That has not come to fruition to a point of application yet, but we are anticipating either an industrial flex use or a specialty storage type use, specifically geared more towards the airport overlay. You can't do any housing in that area, so it would be more of an industrial appropriately zoned use for that space. So.
Can you take me back to the site plan? I had a question on that for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
So up there it says proposed lot line. Are you going to be splitting this, or is this going to be subdivided? Right, parcel, correct?
It is, and we haven't subdivided it because it's really easy to subdivide land. And if you don't need to, there's no point in doing that. But this lot could be split up to 2 times into 3 parcels.
Okay.
And so we're trying to be selective with this current development. We'd probably leave it all as 1 parcel
for now, so there won't be
until we have an intended use for that.
Okay.
But yes, that would be the intent, to right on the common lot drive there, subdivide.
Sure. And then what about safety? I know you addressed a little bit in your letter of intent, but can you run that by with me as far as fencing, lighting, any other safety precautions that you guys will be using for the site?
Yeah, great question, Madam Hearing Examiner. So with this type of recreational storage, you have relatively tall buildings, which work great as more of what we call fortress-style construction. So we're a ton of fencing everywhere. We have the facades of the buildings actually working as the security fencing. And then on the westerly side of the property, we would have wrought iron fencing that would be a security fencing, as well as some of the interstitial spaces would be secured with wrought iron fencing. And then as far as the lighting, all the lighting is internal to the site, with the exception of a little bit of pathfinding lighting along Middleton, mostly for pedestrian safety. But all the balance of the light on the site is internal to the site and is downcast for dark sky compliance.
And then you mentioned it's going to be individually owned. They're going to be condos. Is that so? Are you going to have to plat them, or what did the airport recommend as far as how to handle that?
So the airport has a couple examples of condominiumized the airport. So that is established and governed by Canyon County. So we went to Canyon County and reviewed their plats. They've done a couple there, and they also did the Brick 29 building in Nampa is another good example of a condoed product in Canyon County. But there was only like 5, so there's not a lot of them.
A lot of condos.
So the intent there would be you would have common ownership of the land, and then the individual air rights of the individual buildings would be owned as a condo. The structures themselves would be owned by the overall property owner still.
Okay, like the HOA or condo association?
Yeah, COA,
Okay,
yep.
great. I think that was all the questions I had at this moment, so thank you.
Madam Hearing Examiner, we did have one consideration just with what we're seeing out there with the roundabout construction. I know this approval is usually good for 12 months. If it's okay with and the hearing examiner, we would request 18 months, mostly because of the construction of that roundabout. We anticipate that being some delays in this construction.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. This is the public hearing. If I don't have anyone signed up to testify, is there anyone that would like to testify on this application? No? Okay. Alex, question for staff. Are we okay with having the 18 months, give them an extra 6-month extension? Is that, and I guess follow up with for Rob, does that seem adequate enough for timing?
Madam Hearing Examiner, I believe that's the longest that you are able to approve through this hearing, so
Okay,
staff doesn't see a problem with that, especially with the construction in that area.
sure. Rob, what are you estimating as far as the roundabout? What's the time frame on that?
Has started construction and it's scheduled to be completed in November.
Oh, okay.
So to whatever extent that has an implication on the project, I guess I'm not, it's not for me to speak to. I just know that that's the time frame of the roundabout, and it sounds like staff is okay with the extension.
Sure, that's fine. We can update the condition and Alex, that'd be fine. Would the applicant like to come back up? Have anything else to say?
Madam Hearing Examiner, really enjoyed working with Alex on this project. It's important that we make mindful decisions for Caldwell, and we felt like we had a good product, but we did, kind of go back and discuss with our market specialists and found this to be a better solution. It's similar, it looks the same, but it is intended to be a more beneficial use of. So I really appreciate your consideration.
Sure. I did have one more follow-up question. Are you going to have any staff on site, anyone that's going to be on site operations for maintenance or anything? Or is this going to be more self-storage and?
Yeah, great question. So we do have an office on site.
Okay,
that
was
is
what your
intended,
elevation shows
yeah,
the front of it? Okay.
yeah, which is intended for operations. That office will be set up so it could be manned or it could be unmanned, depending.
Okay.
So as operations are needed, it may be that is used at the upfront when it's being leased out. And then once, the capacity of leasing is satisfied, then that may become an unmanned facility.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Morgan Bisa, Deputy Director of Planning and Zoning. I just wanted to clarify regarding the timing. The applicant would have 1 year from the date of approval to submit a building permit. They don't have to be completed. They have a year to just turn in their building permit application. And from the date of submitting that application, they have an additional 2 years to complete it. So there's actually 3 years from today that they would have to do this project. So I don't necessarily think that an extension is needed.
Okay.
And I'm not necessarily sure that we could put a condition in that would surpass the code, because the code does say the permit has to be in within 12 months.
12 months.
So I don't think that we could put a condition in that says the 18.
Okay.
I don't think that'd be appropriate.
Will that still work for the applicant?
The 3 years.
And then, Alex, I remember on a few of our other mini storage applications, we would have conditions concerning office hours and time, and is that something that was addressed, or
Madam Hearing Examiner, yes, normally that is something that is addressed. With this one, I didn't find it as, or staff didn't find it as necessary with it being next to the airport in a predominantly commercial industrial area.
Okay.
If they were adjacent to the residential on the other side of the street, yes, but
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay. With that, I will close this public hearing. I will render a decision. And based on the testimony, information received, and record of evidence presented, I will approve the application for the Guardian Boat and RV Storage Facility. Thank you. Okay, so again, action item number 2 has been tabled to September 13th, and we will now do action item number 3. This is the public hearing, case number SUP 23-000010, from Kimley Horn on behalf of Austin Cox and Steve Satterley, requesting a special use permit for a multifamily development in excess of 25 feet in height adjacent to a single-family residential development. And it is called Kahara Apartments. And with that, Alex, would you like to start with the staff report? Thank you.
okay. Thank you, Madam Hearing Examiner. Alex Jones, Associate Planner, 61 Cleveland Boulevard. And again, this is the application for SUP 2310 Kahari Apartments. The subject site location, this is a 2.4 acre parcel on the east, located on the southeast corner of highway, that's not right, sorry. On the east side of North Illinois, just south of the intersection with East and Caldwell. Here are photos of the subject parcel. The first one on the left is looking from Illinois, and the one in the middle and on the right are looking at the subject parcel itself from the mobile home facility. Our application request is a special use permit for a multifamily development and to exceed the 25-foot height requirement. For surrounding site conditions, there is residential to the east and south, west and north, and manufacturing as well to the west. There's also the public park to the south. For current surrounding zoning, the site itself is zoned high-density residential R3, which matches the south, east, and north. The east also has R1 low density, and the west also has high-density residential, neighborhood, and light industrial. For development proposal, this is a 2.4 acre parcel with 4 3-story multifamily buildings totaling 48 units. This is also, staff would also like to present a late exhibit for the updated site plan showing the new approved access.
And this is a site plan that I saw yesterday and we discussed. Okay.
Correct. This is the one that is present to you right now and the one I've updated in the report.
Thank you.
This is the old landscape plan. It's 16% qualifying open space. I'd like to present another late exhibit, the new landscape plan and rendering, which should be available to you. Staff was able to review this, and it does still meet code standards. They might be under the 16% qualifying open space, might be around 15% now, but that's still well over the 10% minimum. Here are the conceptual elevations. For approved developments, there is Madison Estates to the west, which is 15 fourplexes, and Monument Valley Townhomes to the north, which is 36 townhomes. Oh. Sorry about that. I skipped ahead. As stated before, 15 fourplexes in Madison Estates and 36 townhomes to the north for Monument Valley Townhomes. For the zoning district purpose statement, this is the statement for high-density residential. This development meets that purpose statement. For comprehensive plan analysis, is zoned high-density residential. which matches the north, east, and south. Proposed residential density is 20.42 dwelling units per acre, which is under the 25 maximum. And this is in conformance to the city adopted comprehensive plan. Utility provided to ITD submitted comments and had no concerns, and we received no public comments. And site-specific conditions or concerns, the height waiver for building over 25 foot adjacent to other 25-foot dwellings. And another condition that wanted to be added is needed a cross-access agreement with the parcel owner to the south for their new access. Staff finds that this aligns with 5 goals and 10 policies as shown here, and is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. Staff recommends that the hearing examiner approves the request that is subject to the conditions in the FCO. And I stand for questions.
Thank you, Alex. I did have some questions that we went over yesterday. Thank you. I guess I have some follow-up questions to Rob. Just kind of going over the requirements for the access. It looked like Steve had just recently approved the access. Can you explain to me that process and what outstanding items still need to be handled?
Approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Hearing Examiner. The issue we were running into was the initial proposal had an access point that was immediately adjacent to the neighbor's access point. And that can be problematic with ingress and egress, and it creates confusion when vehicles are trying to come in and out. What Steve's requirement or obligation was is that this property connect with the adjacent property and try to merge both into one access point, which would make a safer situation for both developments, frankly, and would allow an easier access for cars to get in and out. And I know that presents a little bit of concern with maintenance, and so there's a little bit of maintenance negotiation that probably has to go on, and we feel strongly that that's probably something that can be worked out fairly easily, but the combined access is really the only way the access is going to work at this location.
And as far as, do you have a template or an access easement, maintenance easement for the applicant to use, and will that be required to be done before you guys accept construction plans, or Alex said maybe before building permits can be issued? When is the best time for that to be document for the owners to sign and have everything finalized?
That's a very good question. Generally, so to answer your first question, we do have some templates. We have other examples of access easements, and generally they're not in depth. I mean, they're pretty simple. It depends on how much responsibility, how much maintenance items they want to add into that agreement. The access is generally required. The easement or the agreement would be required during plan review for plan review approval. But there have been exceptions to that where we've allowed that to be deferred and held up a C of O or some kind of final construction C of O for that document. So Steve's intent probably is to have it during plan review.
Okay, knowing Steve, probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I had at the moment. Let's now have the applicant or the applicant's representative come up and speak. Thank you.
Hello, Horn. Address is 1100 West Idaho Street, Suite 210, Boise, Idaho 83702. I'll just wait a second on this. Madam Hearing Examiner, thank you for your time this afternoon. So before you were bringing Kahari Apartments, that team includes Kimley Horn, Full Sail Real Estate, and Glancy Rockwell Associates as the architect. Shown here, Steve Satterley is with Full Sail Real Estate out of Meridian. Emma and Gabriel, Gabriel's here today, are civil engineers with Kimley Horn. I myself am a planner with Kimley Horn. This started back in our pre-application appointment. In May, we also held our neighborhood meeting. In June, we submitted our application, and then we're here today for the hearing examiner. So before you tonight, again, it's just that special use permit for multifamily in the R3 zone over 25 feet in height. Again, this is where the project is located off of Illinois Ave. We are within a centrally located area. We're within a 5-minute drive to Indian Creek Plaza. So we feel like this is generally the best place for something of this density to be located. The future land use map designated this property and several of the properties north and south of us high density residential. The zoning also already has R3 high density residential zoning, so there's no comprehensive plan amendment or rezone, just a special use permit. Shown here is the original submittal. That included 49 units, 2 and 3 bedroom units, about 20 dwelling units per acre. The R3 zone technically allows up to 25 dwelling units per acre. So we just wanted to show you where we started. We did get the staff's comments regarding cross-access. So this is the one that you just saw. So you can see the difference, no change in unit counts. Generally, the existing home that will stay off of Illinois Ave is, there's currently one curb cut just for the house to its main garage. There's a massive garage in the back that had its own other curb cut, and then the manufactured home community had a third curb cut. So we're excited to say that this would get us all down to one, and we are actively working with that neighbor and are happy to accept that condition regarding cross-access prior to a building permit, cross-access agreement. This is the plan that the neighboring property owner also seen and has conceptually said this meets their goals. We're still working out who pays for what and everything else, so we'll make sure that's all written down into the formal agreement. And so this is just a zoomed in view of that cross-access area. So you'll see it's one access in and out for everybody, and there are speed bumps that are included. There's fencing delineating our site from their site. Their site actually recently had a driver crash into their fence, and it's not in great condition, so they were actually pretty excited to hear that we could help solve that problem, so we can put a nicer fence in there. There will still be a lot of openness between our two properties, but ours will likely have parking enforcement of some kind to make sure that our residents and their guests are the ones using the parking associated with our project. Regarding parking, we're required to provide 72, so we're at 77 spaces right now, and that includes 24 bike stalls. This is the new open space exhibit that we have here, just fresh off the print this morning. We're required to have 10% open space, depending on what you count as qualified and everything else. We're actually closer to 34%. We have about 33,000 square feet of open space within this site. We are including an amenity, the tot lot in the bottom right corner, and open space areas as well. It's important to note, we know we have neighbors here tonight, and we look forward to the discussion. There are some things that we've done prematurely to this meeting to make sure that we are being respectful to our neighbors. Our initial concept did include balconies on all the units, but we have removed all the balconies. So we are 3 stories in height. Our closest neighbor is Manufactured Home Community South, feet away, and to the west we're at over about 120 feet. North 150 feet, and then to the east there's significant grade change. They are higher to the east, and that's over 324 feet. Shown here are the elevations for the project that you already saw. In general, we have significant window fenestration, we have modulated roof lines, and a variety of materials as well. And we just ask your approval of the special use permit. We agree with the conditions in the staff report and the ones discussed so far.
you. I do have a few questions for you. So when I saw an email, it looks like the gentleman that owns the property, the mobile home property that you're getting access from is Jared.
Mm-hmm.
Then, and again,
I think
whatever,
it's Jerry, yeah.
or Jerry. So I saw that he has an email that he said yes. Is there any other, like, formal agreement or anything else that was been discussed with him?
Madam Hearing Examiner, not at this time. When we have talked over the phone, it's been pretty agreeable. There's just a lot to work out with who's paying for which improvements. So the formal agreement is not written at this time, but it can be written before the building permit.
Okay. And tell me about how your neighborhood meeting went.
Madam Hearing Examiner, we hosted the neighborhood meeting at the library. We met the noticing requirements, and we had one neighbor, which included a couple. I believe they live in the northeast of us. They showed up. They generally, I think there had been another neighborhood meeting in the past. I wasn't at that one, so I can't speak to it. But they said that it's the same as the last one. They didn't really have a lot of questions, so
Okay.
it was pretty short.
I think that's all for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, this is a public hearing, and I have some people that would like, I guess I have one more person in favor that would like to speak. Gabriel O'Reilly, would you like to speak? Ma'am? You're good? Okay. Again, this is a public hearing, so I have people that sign up in opposition that have marked to speak. The first speaker is Charles Pike. Please come up, state your name and address for the record.
Hello, I'm Charles Pike from 920 North Illinois Avenue.
Before you start, can we get a aerial so we can see where he lives, or? Go ahead, Charles, you can, and I'll have him bring that up.
All right, I've got a few points beyond privacy with this design. I mean, it's effectively going to block my entire view of the hillside. I can't imagine I can grow any trees large enough to be able to, well, protect myself from other people's gaze. There's also historically a artesian well on the northeast portion of that lot that runs from the east to the west and ties into the storm drain. The city's aware of it. I've talked to them before about the storm issues that we sometimes have on Illinois. And they say it just runs constantly. Everyone knows about it. I'm wondering if there's any studies that's been done, how it's going to affect groundwater, because by design, one of those buildings is right on top of it.
Okay.
So and the two-story house that's on the proposed lot all have basements. So if this raises groundwater, it's going to be an issue for every one of those people along Illinois Avenue. The next point was I was kind of concerned with why we need this development when there's approved developments in this area already. I mean, I understand the housing is an issue, but I don't understand why we need to approve another one when we're just waiting for them to build the others. The third point that I'd like to make is along the ditch bank there, that's Black Canyon Irrigation. It's a large ditch at the top of Canyon Hill. In the last 10 years, like, while we're not in a floodplain, but in the last 10 years, they've lost control of the ditch once in the last 6 months. I'm wondering if there's any mitigation that this development would be willing to do to make sure that that type of stuff never happened again. Because if what happened 6 months ago happened 3 years from now, all of these people could be affected by it.
Okay.
And those are my points. Thank you.
Okay, hold tight, Charles. So, Rod, what is the city's policy for the artesian wells? Is that going to have to be abandoned?
Yes, Ms. Hearing Examiner, it would be the policy that clearly that's not a city well, so that's a private artesian well, and if there is a well there, it has to be properly abandoned. And whether that impacts the groundwater level or not, it's hard to say, but there's always that potential. And so, then that the developer's obligation and responsibility to investigate that, to make sure they're not negatively impacting the neighbor by abandoning that. But that would be part of the development responsibility.
Okay. And what about Charles's concerns with the Black Canyon irrigation ditch? Is there any conditions that you guys are going to have for that?
So this came up in a hearing on that other development that's just north of this location. The city really doesn't have any jurisdiction over Black Canyon. We have to assume that they're doing their maintenance and that they are observing and taking care of their ditch. If their ditch has a problem, clearly there could be impacts, for residents that live down the hill. But ultimately, that's the ditch company's responsibility. The city has no jurisdiction over that.
I would just like to point out that since that last meeting, they'd lost control of it again. That happened since then. It's for a week and a half. They had to redirect traffic because of the mud that was delivered down there. And had I not been out there at 10:30 at night cleaning the storm drain out, it would have flooded me and all 3 of my neighbors to the south.
Yeah, and that is correct. I do recall that incident occurring after that last public hearing that we had.
Okay. Thank you, Charles.
Thanks.
Next to speak, I have Dan Goodman. Please state your name and address for the record. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Hearing Examiner. My name is Dan Goodman. I'm here in a representative capacity. I represent Dave Witt. My address is 5700 East Franklin Road, Suite 200 in Nampa. David Witt, he's an affected neighbor to this development. He owns the property at 1000 Illinois Avenue. That's the property that's right, to the right, or just to the east of the proposed development. I want to make sure that you and the city are aware of a pre-existing boundary dispute that was not brought up in the staff notes, and I haven't heard it mentioned thus far at this hearing. I'd like to illuminate that boundary dispute and then discuss some of the issues that we have with this specific application. Now, this boundary dispute pertains to the diagonal running northwest to southeast boundary line separating the proposed development that's to the west of that line with Dave Witt's property to the east. There's a current dispute as to where exactly that boundary line sits. The developers have procured us, it seems to claim that boundary for their proposed development extends beyond the pre-existing fence that's there. Whereas we have a separate survey provided and procured for Dave Witt that indicates that boundary line is actually on the other side of the fence. There's a difference, my understanding is there's a difference in where this boundary could be by as much as 9 feet. And as far as I'm aware, that boundary dispute extends throughout the entirety of that diagonal line. Now you'll notice that, and it's my understanding and belief, that the maps provided by the applicant are all based off of their understanding as to where the boundary is. And you'll also notice if you look at their maps that they've provided, the measurements that they've included, many of which including the setback distance along that diagonal line is 15 feet. Or correct, believe the boundary is, then at least that portion of that diagonal line setback is okay. But if we're correct, and we believe we are correct, then that setback is far less than 15 feet, and it could be.
Site plan? Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No worries. It could be as little as 6 feet.
Okay.
And that goes against the Caldwell Code. Additionally, even if they are correct, and again, as I've said, we're quite certain that they're incorrect about where they believe the boundary is. Even if they are correct, there's several other issues that I'd like to point out to you and make sure that the city's aware of. The first is that, and I'm sure you already know, there is a height restriction imposed broadly in the Caldwell Code. It's specifically Code Section 10-2-3, and I'm referring specifically to Note A1 of that. That prohibits building heights over 25 feet when they are adjacent to a single-family home. Dave Witt's property constitutes a single-family residency. And it's my understanding that there are other single-family residencies surrounding this proposed development as well. Now, to be as upfront as I can with you, it's certainly within your discretion and within the City Council's discretion as to whether you want to impose that code section and have it apply to this development or not. However, I'd like to remind you, Madam Hearing Commissioner, as well as the City Council, if we get to that point, that the purpose of this ordinance limiting building heights of no more than 25 feet next to single-family homes is inspired by and essentially developed out of Caldwell's comprehensive plan. But the goals of comprehensive planning, obstructions to people's views, sight lines, as well as the impacts of towering buildings next to single-family homes with regard to light and shadow. All of those concerns derive from the Caldwell's comprehensive plan and then came about in the city's code. And so although you have discretion and the city has discretion as to whether you want this code section to be imposed on this development or not, there is a strong policy reason for making sure that this is imposed regardless. So that's one issue, the height restriction. And again, I'd like to remind you that all of these additional issues that I'm going to mention are based off of their current maps, which we think are fundamentally inaccurate.
Dan, your 3 minutes is up. I'll let you just summarize real quick and finish.
I appreciate that. Another issue that I'd like to briefly mention is the corner lot setback of corner lot at the north portion. You know, even if the boundary line is correct, there's still only a 10-foot setback at the northern portion of the proposed development that's supposed to be 15. Also, there should be a landscape buffer between different land uses. We have different land uses here between my client's land, Dave Witt's land, and the proposed development. The city code requires that there are trees that are spaced 35 feet apart and no more, as well as shrubs that are spaced no more than 8 feet apart. And I don't see that in their landscape plan. I also don't know whether the applicant has gone through a landscape design approval process, which is also required by the code. And then finally, we have two last issues. It's unclear whether there's going to be a fence around this property. We'd like to see that there is a fence. Caldwell Code imposes that there should be in a situation like this. Finally, the turn radius. Turn radius plan radius, an inside radius of no less than 28 feet. It's unclear from the maps that they provided whether they meet that requirement or not. And that obviously creates a safety hazard. Ultimately, however, and I'll finish now, I appreciate you giving me the extra time, this boundary dispute is not resolved. We would like to make sure that this process does not go forward until this boundary dispute is resolved, because it's going to create more headaches, not only for us, but certainly for the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next to speak, I have Nancy Curry. Okay. Please come up to the podium and speak your name and address for the record. Thank you so much.
Okay, hi.
Hey, Nancy.
Nancy Curry. I live at 918 North Illinois Avenue. First, I was going to point out one thing where I heard on the proposed people mention that the Monument Valley complex was over there, but it's our understanding that has pulled out and that land is up for sale again. So that is not there.
That was on a previous application. Okay. We'll follow up and ask Alex.
Okay. So what was I mention now? In 1982, we chose to purchase our home in a quiet area of mostly seniors and have owned our home on North Illinois for over 40 years. I'd like to first address these traffic issues. It's already dangerous for residents exiting their driveways onto the very busy North Illinois. Since the Maverick gas station extended into a truck stop, our street has constant traffic and has now become a route. In addition, we have extensive traffic to and from Sacagawea School. And another thing I was looking at here, I didn't get to see the new map that they presented now. But when I look at that new map, they used to have 5 spaces or 6 spaces of additional parking here closer to the exit lane. But now I counted there's 14. So that makes about, this proposed complex would add an additional 85 or more vehicles to the already heavy traffic congestion on North Illinois. That's what it would work out to. So anyway, so then we have 85 plus additional vehicles, add significantly more traffic noise for all the existing residents. And when was the last time a traffic study was conducted? Completed since the Maverick truck stop was built? Multifamily developments negatively affect existing homeowners' property values. Who would want to live in a residential home with a huge multifamily complex 10 feet from their property line, invading the homeowner's privacy and blocking all scenic views of the wooded hillside? The outside lighting from this complex will shine directly into the residential homes and yards, affecting quality of life. Crime statistically increases with multifamily developments where there are a large number of people in a small property area. This multifamily plan development does not contribute a compatible design to the existing mostly one-story single-family homes in the neighborhood. For instance, you've got the building type of multifamily. The height, they say, more than 25 feet, but if it's that high, it's going to 38, 40 or more feet. It's not going to be 25 feet. And you have the site location. The proposed buildings are a 10-foot setback from our property lines, not 123 feet, because look at this. These long-term family residential homeowners may wish to develop their homes up to their property line in the future. So they can't claim that you're going to have 123 feet from the homes, because any of these people could choose to make a bigger home and put it back towards the line. And each of these units has 24 windows facing the existing single-family residences, each unit, which severely affects the right to privacy for us in our own homes. And it does not improve the visual appearance of the residential neighborhood by constructing huge apartment buildings totally blocking the natural views of the wooded area, which the property owners have enjoyed for decades. We specifically purchased this property in 1982 because we had such a nice view out the back of our house. So we so enjoy being in our backyard, looking down to the wooded area and up to the church on the top of the hill. We want our well-established neighborhood to remain single-story homes only. Thank you.
Thank you. So Nancy, did you attend the neighborhood meeting?
I was unfortunately out of town. I couldn't.
Okay.
The timing was terrible.
And then Alex, what's going on with that other application? Do you know, monumentation?
Madam Hearing Examiner, with that one, I have worked with the developer on some site plan changes.
Mm-hmm.
And they are correct that I have seen the development for sale on their websites as well. This hasn't been uncommon of people who get their developments approved and then sell it off to other developers. But they have been working with me to change up their site plan, lowering their density by, I think, 3 units. But other than that, that was the last I've heard from them.
Okay. And then, Alex, one more follow-up question. Nancy's referenced she's lived there since 1982. Clearly, it's zoned high density, and the comp plan high density, when was that updated? I'm curious to know when that was updated.
That one, I do not have the actual number. It's been there since the 2020 comp plan, so it's been at least the last 3 years.
Were you involved with that at all, knowing that they updated Nancy, the comp plan?
No,
The zoning
never
for
heard
that
of it.
area? Okay.
Never heard of it.
Okay. I think that's all I have. Some of the questions as far as lighting and parking, I will ask the applicant back up.
Stop, have they
the
done a
traffic
traffic study
Yes,
on,
I was
since that
gonna
truck
follow
stopped
up
out
with
there?
that. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Mrs. Hearing Examiner. We did a traffic impact study for the intersection of North Illinois and Marble Front Road, and that was completed in 2022. Level of service at the intersection currently is level of service B for AM and PM, which is very acceptable. In 2030, the level of service at the intersection is still level of service B in the AM and PM. The main impacts that we saw during this transportation study is that in 2030 there begin to be issues with the Indiana and Marble Front intersection, and we are already aware of that and understand that there's going to have to be changes made at that location at some point in the future. But we are monitoring this to see primarily what the impacts are of the development that's going on further to the east, coming back into town, what that's going to look like. And so we are keeping a pulse on that.
Okay.
Well, the only thing I would ask about that is, what about the traffic that comes from Marble Front to like Madison? That's where there's really heavily trafficked since that truck stop got in there. You didn't go any further up Illinois than Marble Front?
Ms. Hearing Examiner, our study included primarily Marble Front and North Illinois. It included Indiana Avenue and Marble Front Road and Indiana Avenue and Lincoln Street. That was the
Yeah, that's not our
that was the
area.
area that we were looking at.
Yeah, that's not the area that's affected now. Now the traffic, those truckers are coming down in front of our homes and turning on Madison to go down.
Thank you, Nancy.
Efficient.
Okay, I believe Gerald Curry is next to testify, please. Hey, Gerald. Give your name and address, please.
I'm Gerald Curry. I live at 918 North Illinois Avenue, Caldwell. And just before I get started here, we had one person that come in late,
Okay, I saw that.
Jacob Brown, and there was no sign up
That's
sheet.
fine. I'll make sure everyone that wants to testify gets to
Okay.
testify.
Our many decades-old service infrastructures are going to be severely stressed if this proposed development of this property is approved. The city's sewer capacity will best. Being sewer trucks at the 7-800 block of Illinois 4 times in as many weeks. In fact, there were just 2 of them there just yesterday. There's some kind of sewer problem right in that area. With this complex and the Nogales First Avenue development, the city water volume and pressure will be greatly reduced. The city power grid will be strained, especially in the summer months. The storm drains will be hard-pressed to handle the additional runoff from the proposed complex's streets, added to the already high volume runoff coming down the hill from the Canyon Hill streets. We have already had several instances of flooding on lower elevation properties from heavy rain runoff and canals. In addition, there will be possible flooding to our established properties from unattended irrigation watering. Who does the watering? The owners or the management? Are they using irrigation to water their green areas? Or are they going to be using city water? I saw nothing about that. Golden Gate is the irrigation canal in the city of Caldwell that I have on demand irrigation water rights from my address. We use a pump that requires sufficient volume and head pressure to operate properly. Because this development and the Nogales First Avenue development would supposedly both use pressurized irrigation water, I will believe there will be insufficient water available for my property. Not to mention the properties further down the canal. We already have this problem when Luby Park diverts the water for their purposes. Due to a major canal repair, we had a short watering season last year, and it took all summer for my lawn to recover from the water shortage. I think this has already been mentioned, but there is an existing artesian well on the north side of the property, and that is currently breaching into the gravel road on that side. I mean, you could physically go see there where it's public. I do not want kids in this multifamily complex throwing rocks at, climbing, or spraying graffiti on my vinyl fence. There's no fence proposed to buffer our properties. There's no block wall proposed to buffer our properties. This is a high-density complex it's going to have, and it's for multifamily. There's going to be tons of kids there, and there's nothing to prevent them from destroying my fence or climbing all over the other people's fences. To preserve our present quality of life, I strongly urge the rejection of this unnecessary development. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald.
No questions?
I guess, yes, for Rob following up, what sewer problem is Gerald referencing?
I'm not familiar with a specific sewer problem in this area. Maybe, I don't know if there's more information there.
Okay. What was the sewer issue again that you were telling me about?
I don't know what their issue is,
Oh, okay.
but I've seen those trucks there,
Oh, okay, like maintenance trucks.
and quite often, like I say yesterday, there were two of them there. And it wasn't the storm drains they were working on.
It was the sewer.
It was definitely the sewer because one of the trucks was actually on the property there and the other one was on the other side of the street.
On the subject site property? Or where was this at?
Right at the corner where the two properties meet,
Okay,
if I remember correctly.
okay. And I know.
And on the other side, I don't know where they were accessing it over there.
Okay.
There's probably a manhole over there too.
Okay. And as far as storm drain, Rob, can you talk to like what they're required to do and how they have to keep their storm drain on site based on Idaho State Code?
Yep. Thank you. It is the developer's responsibility to retain all of their stormwater on site. There's a city stormwater manual that outlines the size and scope of a detention basin. They're not their water discharge onto adjacent properties per state code. They are permitted to allow discharge in circumstances where there is already a historic discharge, but they cannot increase any of the discharge on that. But generally, all developments are obligated to retain their stormwater on site. And so when the project's done, there should not be stormwater leaving this site and going into a neighbor's site, as long as it's constructed correctly.
And approved by the city.
Yeah.
Correct. And when the city does plan review, that's something that they look for.
And I'm not sure that can be done. The reason I'm saying that is because you got that artesian well there,
Sure.
which means you already got water rising to the surface. Yeah.
Well, Gerald,
Yeah, it's a spring. I don't know if it's actually a well with a cap on it because the water is coming out of it.
I believe the applicant's engineer is here and maybe he can address the high ground level and.
The area water table fluctuates.
Okay.
Many times, say over a decade, sometimes the water table will be really low. Other years, the water table is so high, it killed my fruit trees. So there is definitely I don't want to say an aquifer underneath there, but there's definitely a high water table.
Okay, thank you, Gerald.
Okay.
That is everyone I have. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Please come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Jacob Brown. I'm address 912 North Illinois and 912.5 Illinois. So, sorry, I couldn't hear something.
I'm sorry, Jacob. Tell me that one more time.
There's two addresses right there. So, yeah,
Right.
912 North and 912.5.
Okay.
The double address.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, so because I didn't know they were building a parking lot also alongside the fence.
Oh, okay.
Also, from my understanding from the seller and from the notes here, their intention is to buy out the, they're going to build along my fence line, eventually take down the front house that's right next to me, and then also they want to buy the mobile home park and develop that. So, like, that's from my understanding the long-term goal. Of course, they can address you that. Yeah, I'm with them. Basically, everything they said, sewage, the sewage trucks are out there currently right now, at least on my way here, having their something down the sewage drain. And then the flooding, as they discussed, that's been a fun one for us every winter. We've been out there multiple times, shovels, trying to get the grates clean. I don't know why that doesn't seem to be upkept by whoever's in charge of that. And privacy, like, I like where I live because I can go hard and not have everybody looking at me as the kids. And a lot of noise. And yes, I'll have a parking lot potentially. For now, they want to put a parking lot, at least half my property parking lot, 10 feet off with trees hanging on the design. They want 10 trees right on my fence line, hanging on both sides of the property that then they would expect me to maintain. And then long-term goal, they want to take down the other house, from my understanding, and then I'll be surrounded by who knows what. And I really do not like that at all. So, but they covered most all my concerns besides I'm two sides and completely surrounded by a lot of people, and I don't like that.
So, Jacob, did you attend the neighborhood meeting?
No, I didn't even know when it was, and
So you
I
didn't
probably was
know.
at work. Yeah, I just got off work from Graveyard and ran an errand and came straight here.
Oh, no. So before the applicant is able to even submit an application, they have a meeting to discuss the project?
I don't know when that was,
Okay.
so.
Okay. Thank you for your testimony.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else that would like to testify on this application? Before I have the applicant come back up, I had some more questions for staff. So, this property boundary dispute, are you aware of this, Alex Morgan? Is this new information?
Madam Hearing Examiner, staff has not heard about this dispute.
Okay.
That would be more of the county's issue with property lines, and it's mainly just surveyors would have to figure that out.
What if it has a significant impact on the site plan today?
If it were to come to where, as they said, the is actually 9 foot inward, site plan would no longer work and pretty much null and void the application. If there is a worry about that, there could be a condition, but also if they come in and their survey doesn't match the actual plot lines, they wouldn't be approved anyways.
Another follow-up question I had is, okay, so let's say that they proposed apartments that meted the height requirement. Would they be allowed to do that currently without an SUP application with their current zone?
Madam Hearing there, no, SUPs are required for all multifamily developments
Multifamily,
in the R3 zone.
It's just they're asking, besides the SUP, an exception for the height.
They're concurrent, just under one application.
Okay. And then what about the rear setback? That it was not adequate? And as far as buffering against single-family residential?
The rear setback is set at 15 foot, which does meet code. I believe what he was stating was that if this property line dispute is correct on their portion, then they would not be meeting that setback.
Right.
The buffering, after reviewing the plan, yes, they would Could be required to put more. I believe the language in that is that they need to have 1 tree per 35 feet, but the languaging is also a little vague on where those trees have to be.
Oh, okay.
So you have this buffer, you need to have this many trees on your site. If you wanted to add a condition, and if the applicant's open to it, add more trees to that area, I believe that's a discussion that we could have with the applicant.
Okay, I think the rest of the questions I have for the applicant. So, since there's no one else that wants to testify, I will let the applicant come back up for their 5 minutes. I hope state your name and address for the record, please.
Madam Higgins, just as a reminder too, you can ask staff questions whenever, even after public testimony is closed.
Okay, sure.
Clarify.
Can we grab our slideshow back? Nicolette Womack, Kimley Horn, 1100 West Idaho Street, Suite 210, Boise, Idaho 83702. Great, just want to have this up. So there were lots of items brought up, so I'll do my best to organize them in a consolidated fashion, but we'll see how I do. So firstly, thank you for the conversation here tonight. We appreciate the neighbors showing up and talking about more to be done to work through these items, and we're grateful for everyone's time in general. Regarding the view of the hillside and the trees along the fence line, shown here is the landscaping plan. At this time, we are amenable to adding additional trees so long as we find a wording of a condition that doesn't create so many trees in the area that they can't survive. We want to make sure they are spaced so that they can thrive in that area. So we're happy to talk through that. In general, there is fencing along the single-family homes to the west where it says existing fence. So the little top left notch out of the site. So we are amenable to adding additional fencing on the inside of that as long as it's required to meet code. I'm sure we can find typology that meet along most of the site. That was something that we wanted to talk through with each neighbor in particular, but is common for multifamily developments. Regarding,
so the existing fence is what you're planning on using, that's already existing, you're not going to tear down and put new fencing in?
No, we couldn't tear down another property owner's fence, so
okay.
We could double up fences if that's what everyone's looking for,
Okay.
and put one on our side. But we didn't have one proposed at this time because one was existing.
Okay.
So, I might be skipping around, so I apologize. Regarding the artesian well, we'll be sure that all the state well or spring code compliance is occurring and that things are removed in a safe manner and don't create any of those code enforcement issues that were discussed, which is standard process. Regarding the ditch overrunning, that's obviously a hazard too. So, of course, additional should be done to make sure there's anything more we could do within reason. It is off-site, though, so it doesn't make sense to, in our opinion, condition this project to solve the ditch company's existing problems. Regarding the boundary dispute, we appreciate it being brought up. I think most people know boundary disputes are pretty common in most of the valley. So we have our own surveyor, which is pretty common in boundary disputes. There's 2 surveyors, and they don't usually agree because they're hired by different people. And so there is already legal processes to work that out and make sure that everyone is in compliance with code and state law and all the things. So there's already processes to get this resolved. We believe that we're being conservative, but if it comes to light that we're not, we would obviously come back and request this be modified to be requirements. So I think there are processes in place that naturally take care of those questions. Regarding lighting, we are proposing lighting compliant with code. Lighting is a twofold issue. You want adequate lighting to keep everybody safe, but you don't want lighting spilling onto the neighbors. I think a lot of the way that the site is designed, that lighting is going to be focused in pathway areas, sidewalks, internal to the site, but we're happy to address and comply with code, which I don't know if Caldwell, maybe staff can answer that, has code regarding light trespass or dark sky requirements, but we're happy to comply with those rules. Regarding safety or increased crime, background checks are standard at most multifamily projects, and we believe that will be standard for the final operator of this project as well. Can't speak to regarding impacts to the adjacent neighbors. We are compliant with the code. We are happy to do more in terms of fencing, landscaping. I know windows were brought up. We have already removed, sorry, can't speak into this mic. We have already removed balconies, but if there's a desire for clear story windows, which are usually the shorter windows where they have a little bit of light trespass on the top, but they're not full length, we could consider that on the third story and accept that as a condition. Just checking. There was a question on irrigation. We are watering using irrigation on site. And then the last speculation about additional development, I'm not personally individually aware of any goals or desires or agreements to do additional development. Any of that kind of speculation anyone could be doing on any of these properties, but it would all be subject to future permits. So there's no you let this in and anything else is a for sure thing in the future. So and with that, we'll stand for any more questions.
Sure, thank you. I guess my first question, and thank you for offering to add more landscaping, and I would definitely be interested in reducing the window sizes for the third floors. But during your neighborhood meeting, you said you only had 2 couples show up, so some of these neighbors have not been in attendance?
It was one couple from one household, okay. Yeah.
And Dan Goodman, who was representing Dave Whitman, is that Witt? Have you been in correspondence with him or the applicant about this boundary dispute?
Our surveyor had some, we were told had some contacting the neighbor. I don't believe they got so far as contacting the neighbor's land use attorney, but we anticipate that discussion to continue. So there hasn't been any more detailed conversation than that.
Okay. What about storm drain? I know you mentioned the artesian well. Have you done any ground well or groundwater monitoring? Do you know if it's high out there right now?
I can have Gabriel speak to that, but I do know we've already had geotechnical reporting, and we'll be sure to be compliant with the recommendations in that.
Okay. Yeah, Gabriel, would you like to come up, state your name and address for the record?
Yeah, thank you. Gabriel O'Reilly, address 1100 West Idaho Street, Suite 210, T, Idaho 8702. So as far as proposing permeable pavers, so
okay, I saw that.
Yeah, everything will be retained on site there. Shouldn't be an issue. We do have a geotechnical report. Groundwater is fairly high in the area, and that's part of the reason we're going with permeable pavers, because there's no room for seepage beds or other surface retention for the water. As far as other issues go, sewage and water pressure, we have heard nothing from city engineering that those will be issues. So.
And are you aware that there's an artesian spring on site?
Yes, we are, and we will be doing more research on that and complying with IDWR for making sure that's dealt with properly, so there's no flooding to our site or the neighbors. Our site would flood first, so we have a very high stake in making sure that that's properly dealt with.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm going to close the public hearing, and I am hesitant to give a rendering. I kind of would like to see this property boundary issue cleaned up, maybe provide a survey, as well maybe an updated landscape plan and updated elevation showing the windows reduced. Do you think we could get that done before the next hearing on the 13th?
Madam Hearing Examiner, I believe the elevations and the landscaping plan would be very doable.
Okay.
My concern with the property line dispute is that that ends up being a civil matter, which if that ended up going to court or something like that, that would drag on for potentially months.
Right.
It's not something that we can easily forecast if we don't have this hearing.
Do you know if they've provided a survey, a boundary, like anything recent with their application other than a site plan?
It might be easier for the applicant to speak to this, but I imagine that their site plan is based on a survey. I don't know what the date of that survey would have been.
Okay. Nicolette, do you want to come back up and testify?
Madam Hearing Examiner, so we have done the survey. Again, our plans are based on that. The goal is to divide the front home off of the multifamily in the back. So there'll be future permit for like a simple lot split or lot line adjustment, I forget the word, for Caldwell, but that will be another checkpoint down the road that city staff can make sure everybody's following the rules.
Okay. So, and are you comfortable if you table this 13th plan showing additional landscaping and the new elevations showing the reduced window sizes?
We are comfortable. Those are conditions we commonly accept at other jurisdictions as well. So we feel very confident we can meet your expectations there and work with city staff and not prolong anything more. But
sure. Okay, that'd be great. Let's do that. And then I guess we can discuss this about the property boundary dispute or something after the hearing, and what the next steps might be or what needs to be done. Yeah.
I can provide some clarity on
that. Sure, come back up.
Do we need to open the public hearing again?
I'll open the public hearing and, yeah. Please state your name and record again. Dan Goodman, correct?
Yes, that's right. My name is Dan Goodman. I'm representing Dave Witt. And thank you for hearing from me again. I appreciate it. To clarify, first of all, and I'm happy to provide this to the city, I have with me here 2 copies of the 2 competing surveys, the one procured by the developer and the one procured by my client. You'll see the discrepancy between the 2 of them. I'd also like to just very briefly mention that when I mentioned that there's also a pre-existing setback violation, what I was referring to, in addition to this boundary dispute, is the northern boundary of the property, which from the maps that I've seen is only 10 feet. And that the proposed unit at the northeastern corner of the development has a backyard setback that wraps around that corner. One side is 15, assuming their boundary understanding is correct.
Correct.
But then the other portion of that same wraparound is only 10 feet, and that runs along the whole.
I think that's for the setback.
I see.
Yes.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then have you or who you're representing been in contact with the applicant to discuss this boundary dispute?
Yeah, so they have been in contact with us, and I have a letter from their surveyor to my client. I only just spoke with my client's surveyor today before this hearing, and was able to get the details as to his understanding of the survey versus theirs. So we intend to connect with them very soon and see if we can get to some kind of agreement here.
Can you connect to them before the 13th?
We can certainly do that. I cannot promise you in any way that this will be resolved before the 13th, and in all honesty, I think it's very unlikely that it will be resolved before the 13th. And I'll also just let you all know that in the event that this goes unresolved and the city decides to move this process forward, we're certainly prepared to file an injunction to stop that from happening.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Okay, with that, I will table this application to our next hearing date, which is September 13th. Oh, sorry, Morgan, yes.
Can you just continue the public hearing to the date certain?
Oh, yes, I will continue the public hearing till September 13th.
One other comment.
Yes.
Because we opened the public hearing and let someone else speak, the applicant has a chance to rebut again.
Okay. Yes, absolutely.
Madam Hearing Examiner, we appreciate the chance to rebut. We'll keep it brief. Boundary disputes are common across the Treasure Valley, and there are processes when staff says civil matter legally for other courts to work these things out. We don't believe that our project should be delayed in order to work on an item that's not at the purview of the city. We're trying to work with everyone. As you heard, the surveyors have spoken to one another, and we'll continue doing that. We would just be eager to move forward with the process as we applied, I'm looking at quite some time ago. Looks like we applied in June, actually. So we're eager to move forward and comply with things as reasonably possible.
Sure. No, thank you. And I understand that there probably won't be a resolution. I just want, while we have the extra 2 weeks to make those changes, that a dialogue gets started. So that's my only plan, is that there's communication between the service. Yes. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, I will close the hearing. It is 2:56 p.m. Thank you. All right. Thank you.